Welcome to ALN Thursday at 3. My name is Mike Bordenaro. I'm the Executive Director of the Asset Leadership Network, and we're very happy to have David Totman return to be our guest. We've got some great things to talk about, so we'll get to that in just a second. But first, we always like to thank our members, Onuma System. We've got our ALN patron members. We've got our organizational members. And we couldn't do these programs and our other activities without all of your support. So thank you very much. And welcome to 3 new members: Asset Management Partnership, AM/FM Consulting. That is not about radio consulting. That's asset management and facility management consulting. And CDV Systems, which has a very interesting concept of BIM harvesting. So the information about all of the assets in buildings, and it aligns with what Kimon Onuma, our platinum member, has been talking about for ages. And speaking of our platinum member, Onuma Inc., next Wednesday, March 22nd at 4 p.m. is another edition of our ALN BIMstorm Higher Education. And these are learn by doing exercises where you can see advanced tools and processes being used on a sample project. This time it's a women's healthcare clinic on a university campus that we pick up and land in Ankara, Turkey, to show how it could be used to train emergency relief assistance for disasters in Turkey, the earthquake in particular. And then the Andrew James Advisory Group is starting another edition of its A55K professional certification training. If you do that, you get one of these nice buttons, but more importantly, you get to understand what ISO 55000, ISO 55001, and ISO 55002 allow you to achieve if you implement that in your organization. It's a powerful class and it's highly recommended. So, but now we get to welcome David Totman. David
Hey,
wears,
Mike.
Hi, David, good to see you again. David wears many hats. He is a thought leader for Innovyze, the water asset management element of Autodesk, a $5 billion software company. He is the voting member for the American Society of Civil Engineers to ISO 55001 TC 251, and ALN Senior Fellow. What else do you do, David? I know that you're really busy, so it's more than just that.
Yeah, lots of hats. I'm a lot of it towards the American Society of Civil Engineers. So on the sustainability technical committee, on the infrastructure research policy committees. And when I'm not doing any of that, I'm in my my RV and or working on my Jeep. So
Okay. So thank you, Alex Barenblit, for heartily recommending the A55K training. Appreciate that. So there's a lot to talk about, but it's always exciting to understand what's happening on Capitol Hill and how that impacts asset management. And the American Society of Civil Engineers is to be lauded for its tireless efforts to increase infrastructure spending in the US in a structured manner. And the passage of the infrastructure bills last year are testament to that. So what did you learn when you were on Capitol Hill this earlier this month? Wasn't that earlier this month?
yes. Yep. There were hundreds of engineers that flew in from all over the country, and we had what we called our ASCE legislative fly-in. And so we delegations from all over the U.S., from each state, we all descend on DC, and we have lots of educational programs. We we invite public officials, we have panel sessions on sustainability, but then, you know, the crux of that is then we divide and conquer, and we go meet with our respective, you know, Senate and House of Representative members there. You know, and I can go into a little bit, you know, deeper on some of the things that we're kind of talking about, but you know, there's one kind of mantra that I have, and you may have seen this, you know, on LinkedIn. I know we've talked about it with Jim Dieter and others, but if I have, you know, one phrase that I tend to echo all the time is, and I'm just going to go ahead and kind of read this.
Sure.
You know, public infrastructure serves and protects public health. And when asset management principles are applied, preserves public trust. Right? So, you know, public infrastructure, it's in the engineering credo to protect and serve the safety, health, welfare of the public, you know, but we definitely in infrastructure with bridge collapses and with water issues, public trust is being strained, right? And I think asset management, you know, frameworks and principles are key to reestablishing that public trust, because, you know, all that infrastructure, it's only there for a reason, to serve the customers, the citizens, right? And so there's that relationship and that level of service, that quality of life is a measure that is, I think, embodied in our asset management framework. And I think some people kind of forget that. You know, the big deal with the infrastructure bill, it was passed. Yeah, it's been years, decades in the making, if you will. Our our report card that comes out every 4 years has been an instrumental, you know, I'll just dare say, marketing tool to educate, right? That's it has been to educate and bring to bear attention from lawmakers about infrastructure. It's done, you know, it's done its job because of, you know, we got the IIJA passed, and just because a bill's passed, you know, doesn't mean the funding is all of a sudden appropriated and disseminated. And so I'll talk a bit more. You know, our focus this year was actually, you know, the FAA appropriations are coming due this September, so there's a lot of conversations about airports, getting that funding, make sure we renew that. Also, the dam inspection programs, right? That's, you know, we get into, you know, we have all these dams backing up reservoirs all over the country, but we have, you know, limited inspectors out there able to do the inspection. So, you know, there's you know, they kind of go hand in hand. So our messaging to lawmakers was, you know, keep, you know, the bill was passed, great, don't give up yet, keep going on the appropriations. And, you know, for water, for us, our messaging was very much, you know, the 55 billion, we absolutely love that, thank you, you know, thumbs up, thank you for that.
Because there was a separate water bill and it got $55 billion.
Well, part of the overall 1.2 trillion, you know, 55 billion was carved out. And that went to lots of different things within water. And I say we were excited to get the 55 billion, but that's, you know, 55 billion over 5 years. And, you know, when you look at the American Society of Civil Engineers report cards, we were kind of estimating the need of 80 billion a year investment.
Not 11 a year, 80.
So we kind of missed it by that much, you know. and but, you know, obviously, you know, we'll take the 55 billion. That's you know, unprecedented investment in kind of these lump sums. And so, you know, the challenge, and as we were talking to lawmakers, the challenge was, you know, that's all, a lot of it is being channeled through the state revolving fund, which, you know, is an existing mechanism that has been, you know, funded for years. And quite honestly, the municipal water utilities haven't fully taken advantage of that. Now, it is a bit challenging to get SRF funding. There are applications, there are rules. You kind of have to know how to fill out these applications and have grant writers. And a lot of the small to medium utilities just don't have that expertise, right? And so, appropriately, EPA is looking for, and EPA administers the SRF. They're looking for those projects that meet certain criteria, and if you're just not experienced in that, it can be daunting to apply. So many don't, and so we were kind of we're telling lawmakers to say, well, we kind of need to streamline that process. We kind of need to get small and rural, small to medium rural utilities involved. Make it a little bit easier for them. The IRS, we have the 1040 and we have the 1040 short form. So can we
Right.
can we get an SRF short form, for the small to mediums? And also we're kind of talking a lot about a lot of the funding is for projects and basically steel and concrete, right? And so a lot of people don't think, oh, well, gee, if I took part of this application, if I could just take a bit of money and buy some tools, some asset management tools, some software. I don't have a CMMS, I just have Excel spreadsheets. Can I get a system that tracks my work orders and actually tracks work to the specific asset, not just a street address, right? So, we're really pushing for, it's okay to spend a little bit of money on digital tools, on asset management frameworks, because, every dollar spent in that will reap, thousands, if not, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in ROI, when you're investing in the rest of that concrete and steel. So, it's again, I think you and I have talked about the words asset management. In many report cards ago, it never showed up. The 2017, I think it showed up, like 6 times, and then the last one it showed up, 20 plus times, right? So we're getting better as engineers. We're getting better to understand. We've understood full life cycle asset management, but we just haven't used the right vocabulary, and so that's getting a lot better. So that was quite a bit of the the conversation on Capitol Hill was getting them to understand their and quite frankly ASCE, we're a volunteer organization. We live in every state, and we're there to help. We're subject matter experts. Just give us a call. We're very happy to jump in and educate. And so and there's all sorts of kind of new ways to look at some of the things. I really appreciate the investment in removing lead service lines once and for all. And that's been that public health phenomenon. But this might be a little controversial, but I kind of have to, having been a utility asset manager, our assets and our responsibility stopped, at the meter, at the stop box. And the service line, we never had any control. That was a plumber's thing in the home builder. And so, it's interesting that asset management now spilling over into, almost all the way up to, the home. So, that's where the federal government has done a great service by stepping in and saying, well, here's funding for that. Because, the homeowners couldn't really afford replacement. The utilities like, hey, I'm not allowed to touch that.
Right.
So it's great the federal government came in and said, you know what, we'll take care of this. You guys still had to figure it out and coordinate, but here's money to go, eradicate lead service lines. So an interesting kind of play there. So yeah, I mean, that was a big focus. Was you pass the law is great, but keep the money coming. And while we appreciate it, we'd also like to call this a down payment. and please reconsider, consider more IIJAs in the future.
What was the response you were hearing? 2 questions, and I'll let you answer them the way you want to.
Yeah.
What was the response? And then what did you learn in the education and training? Was there anything that jumped out at you in that?
The response is, and again, most of us, very few had an opportunity to actually meet with senators. It was usually staff, but it'd be chiefs of staff,
Sure.
and they're kind of the ones you want to talk to, right? Because certain the good ones, senators may come and go, and staff stays,
Yes. Right.
and so they're definitely the hard workers there. They're one, very professional, very respectful of the messaging. Many of them were familiar, I think, but they didn't know the details. And they were kind of like, okay, they did the kind of the nervous, yeah, that sounds great, and I think that's why I think the messaging of, when you start talking about digital tools and all these things, kind of like, whoa, that's a bit too much. I think going back to that, public infrastructure, serves and protects public health, and with asset management principles restores, and preserves public trust. That they like, right?
Okay. Okay.
Um, but I highly doubt Congress is be going around talking about, oh wow, that Totman said this thing and it was really cool. I think it's all they're into their next sessions, and off they go. But we got it. We got to try. We constantly remind them. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Mark LaPlante makes a very good point that it's
yeah,
the
and that's
trust that gets you reelected. Yeah.
yeah, that's that does seem to be their focus, is what are the things, what are the sound bites that help me with my constituents. And when you start talking digital tools and things like that, usually that's
You're
not
not
what.
going to get them reelected. Right.
Yeah. So they say, but it's something that we are definitely continue, and we'll be there every single year, reminding them, keep the funding coming, so.
Well, excellent. Thank you for that effort on behalf
Oh
of the nation.
yeah, and as far as the education and trust, what it was actually a lot of panel sessions. I actually had the privilege of attending one with the House Transportation Committee, Sam Graves, Representative Sam
Oh,
Graves. And definitely, I think the transportation industry is embracing technology. They're embracing IoT. They're embracing those things, which is great to see. There's kind of a reinvigoration of the bridge inspection programs.
that needs
And
funding just as much as the bridge renovation does.
exactly. So the transportation dollars are huge. They dwarf the water contribution. So it's a there's what gets them a little difficult. I think in asset management we get it, and especially I got it from Colorado Springs Utilities, managing 4 services. The interplay between infrastructure, our funding, we put it in buckets, like, oh, transportation funding shall not touch water funding. But yet when you're building drainage systems in a neighborhood, I mean, our tools, with from Autodesk, our tools handle electric, gas, water, wastewater, transportation, curb and gutter, buildings, pipes, all of that. So our tools take a holistic approach, but yet, oh, funding, you can't mix and match. So we got some work to do there.
Well, thank you for taking that on. I always love quoting the Jim Dieter line of, our bridges aren't falling down because we don't know how to maintain our bridges. Our bridges are falling down because our leaders don't have the initiative to marshal the will of the people to make it happen. And so I think your efforts of educating the legislators help them realize that to build that trust, they have to have the will to improve things. So
Yeah, very much so. And if I, I think it's that education. It's the, one of the things that came through the bills, was, the quote of, build back better. And there was a lot of, sustainability and resiliency in the language. There was a lot of, equity in the language, and disadvantaged communities kind of, which to me is the epitome of asset management, right? Is, when you look at return on investment and increasing quality of life, I will guarantee you a dollar spent in a disadvantaged community is of far greater value than a dollar spent maybe, somewhere else, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's that lack of funding, quite honestly. I mean, gosh, we have all sorts of topics to talk about, but I think what I learned, in Jackson, Mississippi,
Mhm.
is very much a classic, how did we get here sort of thing, right? Yes, there was a flood, and a levee broke, and there was waters, and so there's an asset management lesson learned, right? Yes, we do have to maintain earthen structures. Just because they're made out of dirt and rock doesn't mean we don't have to maintain them, right? And so
Mhm.
we tend to forget maintenance on earthen structures, but it was just a perfect storm of events in Jackson, that a flood took out the treatment plant. The treatment plant is basically the primary source of pressure. So basically the entire city lost its water pressure. And we learned that in Texas, right? When the snows came, power went out. Well, power runs pumps, no water. So, the energy water nexus. But in Jackson, it's kind of like, wow, it was, kind of the surprise. And they're like, yeah, we know, we live in a 100-year floodplain. But that means it's only going to flood once every 100 years, right? And the answer is absolutely not. That is not what a 100-year floodplain means. It means, there's a 1% of flooding every single year. And I will dare say, with our, and we experience here in California with our atmospheric rivers, no one says, I mean, you don't say climate change, it's extreme weather, atmospheric rivers, like, oh my gosh, what the heck is that? And
Yeah.
they breach levees, right? And the probability is no longer 1%, of a flood every year. It's I don't know what the percentages are, but it could be double digits. And so I think that's what caught, Jackson off guard was, oh, wait a minute, they didn't really do the risk. And isn't that, tenements of our, when we look at even the standard itself, 55,000, right? Section 2.2 benefits, we got like 9 benefits listed, and well, our official old version 2014. But two of the major elements, in our framework is, managed risk, and demonstrating social responsibility, right, is two key tenets. And so, I think we have a awakening. We have a lessons learned from Jackson. We got to wake up. There's a 100 other Jacksons that need to kind of do asset management. But it's, again, when you say that, people's eyes either glaze over, they're like, I don't know where to start, right? And so for us, it's about managing risk and understanding those causal relationships, and in water, historical norms are no longer normal.
Right. Right.
Throw out that data. We have a whole new water picture, in this country right now, from floods to droughts.
So in the time we have left, let's talk about those complex relationships and how software can help people get a better handle on what some people can't even get their arms around. And Innovyze was brought
Yeah.
into the Autodesk family of software. And can you explain how using contemporary tools, humans have evolved our tools and processes if you want to avoid issues, perhaps looking at tools and processes can help.
Yeah, I think, I'm giddy as a schoolboy, with having a new, parental unit with Autodesk. I've used their tools forever, and so is almost every civil engineer. It's that they cut their teeth on it. I think the unique positioning of Innovyze being part of the Autodesk, software suite now is we get into the other aspects of infrastructure lifecycle. Autodesk has been design build for decades, and now they get to be plan, design, build, operate, maintain, assess, rehabilitate, rinse, repeat, start over. And for us, from an asset management perspective, in educating internally, externally, for us managing water pipes, distribution networks, sewer collection systems, I ask people, when you're a water retailer, what do you sell? And they're like, well, we sell water. I'm like, no, you sell pressure and flow, right? Because, when people turn on their faucet, they want water to come out. And when they take a shower, they want nice pressure. And, so that's the service portion, right? That's the level of service aspect of asset management that, it's not just water, it's clean drinking water, but it's also at a prescribed pressure and flow that people pay their monthly bills for. And so, that's, I think, what makes us a bit unique now is with the Autodesk tools, the management of pressure and flow and optimizing. Autodesk is very much into, generative design and what we call biomimicry, right? Because if you look at a tree that's constantly in the wind, Mother Nature does a really good job of engineering the tree limbs, right? It'll fortify them on some sides and not so much on the other because of the wind. Well, we have lots of lessons learned to take Innovyze tools and inject that into the infrastructure lifecycle. So work in progress. We're excited, to kind of blend the tools, and that's really what we're doing in Jackson, right? Is the pressure, pressure and flow, and trying to get normal system operations back online for the citizens of Jackson, so that kids can go to school and families can have nice showers, and just kind of reset the clock, if you will.
So you mentioned Jackson, you are involved in that?
Yes, sir. I was actually called in. Autodesk, we're a proud member of the U.S. Water Alliance, a nonprofit, and Ted Hennepin, who is now, he's the DOJ, he's the court officer appointed to take over the utility. He was a member of the U.S. Water Alliance. I've known Ted. Ted called Mommy Hara. Mommy called, grabbed me at lunch, said, hey, Ted needs a modeler. I called Ted. Our CEO said, of course we'll do this. We jumped in with 2 feet, and before I knew it, I was in the command tent in Jackson, the command center tent, when the FEMA was still there and everyone was still emergency operations, right? And we said, okay, let's see what we need, and we started working on getting a model, which requires data, and that's what's in the works. And now that there are contractors on site locally, that's awesome because they can get us the data, and yeah, we're a team member there in Jackson, and proud to be.
Well, thank you for that. And if the ALN can help get the word out to others, we'd be happy to have some type of program that provides lessons learned, perhaps.
Yeah, I do think, yeah, I obviously will take you up on that, because there are lessons learned, that we're all focused on the future, right? But there's a little bit of, episode of CSI to figure out, how did we get here?
Yeah.
But we're focused on fixing, the now and preparing for the future. But it'll be a classic case of asset management. It's underfunded, under-resourced. A tax base moving out, not sufficient rates, just a classic perfect storm. And then they had a flood and it took out the treatment plant, right? But if you have, risk plans in place, you can kind of help prepare for some of that. But
And
yeah,
that's what we need to do, because whether you believe in climate change or not, you can just look around and see that there are more natural disasters than usual. everyone's got to step up their risk management game.
Yes, exactly. And it's not new, right? AWIA, the America Water Infrastructure Act, passed in 2018, required, all municipalities, 3,300 population and above, to do a risk assessment and update their ERPs and throw in some asset management. And, we just, the EPA just hasn't had, and that's the challenge, right? In Jackson, we have the Environmental Protection Agency to protect drinking water quality standards, and quality was not the issue in Jackson, right? What we need is a Department of Water quantity. And some will say, oh, well, we have that with the Bureau of Rec, but they're focused on all things west of the Mississippi and the Colorado River Pact, right? They're a hydroelectric energy water provider. They're supply, not distribution. And
Right.
so it's we have a lot of lessons learned. I can't wait to kind of build that case study and I say case study, I mean, it'll be ASCE, it'll be AWWA, it'll be the U.S.
Sure.
Water Alliance, it'll be the ALN. We all have a master case study to learn from this.
Excellent. Well, thank you. You've done an excellent job of touching on all the subjects that I wanted to address. It's amazing how fast these talks go, but you got it all in. So thank you for joining us, and thanks to everyone else for joining us today. And I just want to end by once again talking about our upcoming training opportunities. Please join us next Thursday. And then with the Andrew James Advisory Group starting their training program May 15. That is a web-based program, takes 2 weeks. It's about an hour of online self-learning and class learning that's varied throughout the period, and about an hour of study or 2 hours of study. And then we wanted to move up. There we go. And thank our new members, Asset Management Partnership, AM/FM Consulting, and CDV Systems. And of course, thank our existing organizational members, our patron members, CGI. We've got someone from CGI in the audience. Thanks, CGI. And our platinum organizational member, Onuma Inc., with their Onuma system. So thanks again, David. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.